Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living, the space where we talk about what it really takes to live, lead, and stay mentally well in demanding roles. Now, listeners, today's conversation is especially important because if you have ever felt like you're holding everyone together while quietly running on empty, and when we talk about self care, it often gets reduced to buzzwords or like something, take a break, drink water, hydrate yourself, do yoga, or go to a spa, get some bubble bath, and all that. And yeah, those things matter, but they can feel almost insulting when, especially like you're a school leader, juggling students, parents, staff, budgets, discipline, safety, and expectations that never seem to shut off. And my guest today, listeners, understands that pressure deeply. She's the author of Step Up Your School Leadership Game, a book that blends personal stories, practical strategies, and real world leadership lessons for educators stepping into or growing within school leadership roles. But today, we are not treating self care as a luxury or a feel good add on. We are treating it as a leadership maintenance. So let's get into the realities, the resistance, and even the contradictions around taking care of yourself when everyone depends on you. And listens, meet my lovely guest, Cynthia Rapaido. Cynthia, welcome to the Mindful Living. And as always, it is an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Sana. It's so great to talk with you again. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cynthia, especially when people like they're in roles, where personally, professionally, and it's so demanding. Like, even if genuinely they have this intention to prioritize self care, they would say that honestly, they're just trying to survive this week, survive the day. Like, when everything feels urgent, Cynthia, how do you define self care in a way that is realistic, rather than idealistic?
And what you bring out in this podcast is so important because we don't take time to breathe in that sense. We're just going, 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 going. And
Yeah.
um it's a matter of putting it and being intentional with time for self reflection, if anything. Um Reflection time or time to physically take care of ourselves, and putting it on our calendar, um, putting like, let's say, if I have to take that time, mark it on my calendar so that way from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night, that's my time to do exercise or to, go shopping, disengage,
Yeah.
disengage with everybody, so that way I can fill and refill my cup and be present again in an hour, or even just take a drive and don't go
Mhm.
home yet until I'm ready to be present.
Hmm. Yeah, you really bring out the essence of mindfulness because it is such an important component, presence. That's what, being in the present. I think it's such an important component here because if we look at the bigger picture, we do have a lot to think about the future and, feel maybe judging ourselves or the conditions when it comes to past. So I think it definitely is realistic and also like any specific example of self-care practice that you had to simplify or maybe strip down because the ideal version was not just possible in real school life, like in your journey.
Yeah, I can definitely, speak on that.
Mm.
As a school leader, things come at me or came at me the minute I stepped foot on campus. So my commute time was an hour to get to work and an hour back, so we're looking at 2 hours of commute time, and I remember talking to other colleagues and saying, gosh, I don't have any time to myself, to when I go home, I wanna exercise, but it's too late, or, um just having time, and then they said, "Can you take public transportation, so that way you can be productive during your commute time?" I said, "No, there's no public transportation." I mean, I would still need to take a car to get to that public transportation, and then even that would take a long time,
Yeah.
and on the other side, I would have to take public transportation, and they said, "Well, okay, now take a look at your calendar, and" no, if you have to, go week by week, and if there's any day that you can get out early, then put it there on your calendar. So then I thought, that's interesting." Everything else has, like, school dance, basketball game, football game, parent meeting, and so my nighttime events were from, 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes till 9 o'clock at night, and
Mhm.
when they mentioned that to me and said, "Just go, if you have to, week by week." And I did, and I would say, "Oh, okay, this week I have Wednesday, nothing going on," and
Mhm.
put it on my calendar, go home. And they said, "We'll make you a fake clock, on a piece of paper, so that way
Okay.
you put it on and as a reminder, that's your time to go home. At 3:30, you need to leave 3:30, because if I miss that window from 3:30 to 4, then I'm gonna be stuck in commute traffic again." And that started to work, whether it fell on a Wednesday or I got Tuesday off or any of those days, I started to go farther and farther into my calendar. Now we're looking at March, April, May, and I thought, I'm going to plug that in. And whatever
Mhm.
that time was, I got to go home early, and then I would write down on my calendar, um, whatever it was I wanted to do. Go for a walk, go shopping,
Mm.
um, spend time with family. Whatever it was, I was able to plug that in intentionally, and that made a big difference, and know now when I talk to, um, people that I coach, I tell them the same thing because they said they're on overload or they're overwhelmed with their schedule, and I say, "Take time, do it now, put it on your calendar to leave early, get home and rest," or whatever it is, and I think that makes a difference, and then once that time is done, then
Mhm.
again, being present. Now you can be present, or I can be present with family, or I can take time to do emails if I want to, or not, and just say, nope, I'm not going to do emails today.
Yeah. And um I mean, even if one, I think it's not easy because your brain will kind of try to resist. It will you'll kind of have a dialogue that, okay, I'm going to miss this work. I'm going to miss this work if I find time for myself. Let's not do it at all. But then I think it does not happen, immediately. It takes time. Like, you have to actually be very specific that, okay, if I'm free for Wednesday, I think let me work on it to, you know, um, squeeze some extra time, just for myself.
Hmm. And another thing that I learned, Sana, was
Mhm.
um, somebody said, no, don't keep adding more stuff onto your to-do list.
Mm.
Start looking at your not to-do list. And I remember thinking, what does that mean, not to-do list? And they said, "What are you doing that might be taking up more time than you know is not really gonna help
What?
you,
Right.
and it's not really worth it?" And if you have to, then delegate it to somebody else. So delegating to somebody else, or don't do it if it's not gonna help you in any way. So if I'm wasting time going through emails that is on my personal email, and I'm clicking on things that I know are not really important, then start eliminating those, unsubscribe if I don't want them anymore. Uh, and just create these not to-do lists. If I know that um, I'm going to so many different meetings, maybe I can delegate one of the other assistant principals or have a way, um, other people to attend, and then they can report back. So making that kind of building capacity so I'm not burning myself out, but I'm also building capacity so that way they are familiar with more things and they're learning and growing too.
Absolutely. I think the keyword that you mentioned is the delegation, and this is specifically very important, when we are trying to have, or we are having a lot on our plate, and especially somebody in the leadership role, they may feel like, maybe by doing this, they could be letting things go out of their hand or control. They may not getting it done perfectly. And that is going to be hampering in the long term. But I think that is something that, that has to be kind of navigated through, especially when leaders are trying to delegate.
Exactly. And I think, when if I look back and reflect, I definitely could have delegated more and again, looking back at the leadership style, so whether they're very organized and very detailed oriented or they're very action oriented, that fruit leadership style that I had talked about
Yeah.
previously, if I know that they are big picture, but they don't have the details of everything, then maybe I know that I need to work a little bit more closely with them so that way they're not going to get lost or get things done differently than what I imagine. Uh,
Mhm.
and and being able to delegate in such a way so that way they feel empowered with their leadership style. And but again, communicating before something happens and then communicating afterwards and it can get done. And at the same time, it's uh, keeping everybody well informed so that way it's not just me talking to three different people differently or three different groups, but if I can combine them in a new way, combine the
Mhm.
3 leaders in the same room and just say, "Okay, what did you get out of that meeting, or what do you wanna report back?" So that way everybody is learning at the same time, and it's not just me and a dialogue between me and that person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really, that fruit leadership style conversation, that was so interesting. And by the way, listeners, I recorded the episode, I believe last year with Cynthia. So go do check out this blend on your favorite podcast platforms and check out the episode that I did with Cynthia. I'll anyway put the episode link in the show notes to make it easier for you. But definitely, Cynthia, that was a really, really interesting one. And I think you beautifully kind of blended that into in this. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah, and I think, um, by doing that, I think and again, reflecting on that, um I think knowing another person's leadership style allows oneself to go, "Okay, um, I can breathe now.
Mhm.
I can take time to do other things." And again, I think if we're looking at our own calendars and saying, "Okay, we've organized our calendar, but now what can we take off of that?" So that way I can have time back.
Mhm.
That's important, and then at the same time, putting those big priorities onto the calendar. So not just like meetings that I have to go to, but also being intentional about self-care. So if I want to exercise, put that on my calendar. I'm going to exercise from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night every day, or 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning. That there shouldn't be any, if that's a priority and my health is a priority, then putting that on and that's non-negotiable.
Exactly. Exactly. And my next question actually, Cynthia, is somewhat related to this because um, you know, there's kind of a growing criticism that self-care can become a way to avoid hard leadership work. Like that instead of fixing broken systems or having difficult conversations, leaders are told to relax or just take a bath or meditate or exercise. So, how can we separate this meaningful self care from self care that quietly enables dysfunction? Or, people, as people would say, running away from the problem.
I think as a leader, one has to identify, what what skills that they have and what skills do they avoid, and saying, "Okay, that I have," let's say if I'm talking about myself and I'm looking at, uh, things that I might avoid, maybe I have trouble with difficult conversations or, um, bringing something up to somebody because I don't wanna hurt their feelings. Uh, so if I can recognize that in myself, then
Mm.
that has to be a goal that I have to be able to try to overcome. So that can be, okay, I know that that's what got in the way last time, or that got in the way a year ago or last year. So what do I need to work on this year? And then really be aware of it and really try to overcome that. So I know, like, let's say a year ago, like in 2025, one of my goals was I'm gonna be a little bit more direct. It's not very much of who I am, of
Yeah.
being direct. Um, if I don't like something, I usually won't say that I don't like that or I don't like that idea or something like that. But now it's more like, no, I'm gonna say, no, I don't think I want to go out to eat
Mm.
that kind of food. Or let's plan it this way. To be able to express my thoughts and letting them know that I'm not trying to hurt their feelings about it, but
Exactly.
being honest and being authentic.
Exactly. And that is something, I don't know, it's a coincidence or not. That is something I'm still learning it as we speak. But then it's kind of a continuous journey because, like intrinsically by nature, I also feel like that, I have to say yes. Or maybe I shouldn't say something that, will be direct or straightforward or maybe just a yes or no. Like I have to justify why am I saying no or maybe why I'm hesitating just because I do not want to, put the person in front of me in an uncomfortable position, having that weird silence or that exchange of energy. But then, what I have actually learned is you don't have to be rude, but at least you can be direct, so that there's a clarity in there. There is a clarity in there. It shouldn't be like, yeah, I mean, just for the sake of, pleasing that person, you should say yes or you should do whatever is kind of expected.
Right. And I think what you just said is, it could be part of our upbringing, it could be part of our culture. And, other cultures might be more direct and they might think,
Mm.
why can't why can't you and I be more direct? And if you and I are more reflective about it, then we go, okay, each time I'm gonna try to just say no. I'm gonna say no to somebody, uh, and see what happens. Um, I mean, it can just be like you go to the grocery store and you just say, "No, no, thank you." Um, or you're with friends or family and just saying, "No, but thank you." Um, I think that is part of growing and trying to outgrow, and overcome, especially when we're aware of it, that we should at least try to, like one person had said, "Go for the no's." How many no's can we get when or can we do, uh, back to others? Um, and then again, being direct is so important because there's no mixed messages.
Exactly. Exactly. In other words, people, they're very quick to tag you as a pushover.
Exactly, exactly, and again, if people don't understand, part of it, it might be culture, or part of it might be because of our gender or how we were raised. Um, we still have to be able to overcome it, uh, grow, and at the same time, I think that's part of that emotional intelligence, um, of reading other people, uh, and mirroring their how they are, because they might not even know that they're mistreating us, what we consider mistreating, because they're being
Mm.
direct, and so now we just need to be direct back.
Absolutely. And also, Cynthia, one more kind of thought that comes to my mind is, especially many school leaders struggle with identity. Like they're not just principals or administrators at work. I think they carry that role everywhere. So when leadership becomes your whole identity, how does that impact your ability to rest or disconnect?
Uh,
A quick pause for you listening listeners. If this conversation is already giving you language for what you feel inside, or if you feel it's helping you see your patterns with a little less shame, hit follow. All right, back to it.
I think that's a very good question, and I
Mhm.
think when one is able to connect even with other administrators, and network, because it can be lonely, and at the same time, we are in the public eye, um, like, when the day is done, I might be seen out, on this on the in the shopping mall, and I'll get, asked, "Oh, aren't you Dr. Rapaido?" And, I have to be careful what I say and how I conduct myself, and if I network with other people, um, I can learn from them, and if we're in a common space, we carry ourselves we can still be playful. We can still be playful, have fun, dance, sing, goof around, but we have to conduct ourselves without, like, I'm not gonna swear or cuss in front of people, because we don't want that part at our school setting, so why would I wanna do that elsewhere? But at the same time, we are also adult, and we can watch a movie and there'll be swear words. So it's part of the culture, but at the same time, we don't have to, um, be fully, um, in that sense, like, we don't have to swear if that's, just to fit in that sense. So in terms of
Mm.
identity, it's really important to, know ourselves and connect with others, who are similar, so that way we can continue to grow and know how we can conduct ourselves with, other people outside of our work. Does that make
Yeah,
sense, Sana?
it does. It does. And, that brings me memories as well. A kind of you know, it's quite a quirky thing. I mean, as student, if I would see my teacher or let's say my principal, okay, she's shopping there. Okay, that is so interesting. But then, I think if she's still kind of embodying that, principal energy, then I would kind of be very, very, careful. I mean, maybe it could be like a blocker in establishing that human connection. Because after all, I mean, she's also a human. She's also a person. She has her errands to run. She has, so much to do. Not just the principal energy in there. But then at the same time, I think, sometimes it's taken as interpreted in a very bad way that, that even my teacher is also not flawless. Um, like, and maybe sometimes by mistake those kind of things they get established as rumors or this fun quote unquote fun things discussions among students. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of the fear that especially um people who are in those very important roles they have to deal with. And I think what kind of approach that you follow, I think it can also help in at least having that mindfulness that okay, in this present moment this is how I have to conduct myself, carry myself, not just getting too much swayed away just to fit in into that environment, but at least to be human to that extent that yes, I'm able to have that connection even outside of my role or my work or my job.
And that's so true. I think if we live with integrity, it doesn't matter whether we're at work or at home. Um, but if we're grounded, but if something is not grounded, let's say, um, if I were like in a dysfunctional family setting, then it might be different of
Mm-hmm.
how I would conduct myself professionally and personally. Uh, but I think for me, I'm pretty grounded and I'm not around dysfunctional um, situations in that sense. So I think I can be the same person that you see when I'm out in the neighborhood versus
Mm-hmm.
when I'm out watching a football game. I'm pretty much the same person. But I've seen where, situations where educators, um, let's say, okay, they like to have a glass of wine and they like to drink, but they don't party hard like we're in our 20s. How? But I think, if they did continue that way, I mean, that might have been part of their upbringing and how uh, they were always um, when they were younger. So it's hard to say, but I get it. If that's who you are, it would show up both ways in your personal life and your professional life. But hopefully, in their professional life, when they're out in public, they're able to still be human and connect with others, but at the same time keep that professional side, like you say. Um, we don't we put not that they're flawless, but we people have these ideas of expectations and what they would look like or how they should behave in that kind of role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we wrap up, Cynthia, uh, one final question. Um, it's kind of another, like, uh, like a lot of leaders, they only think about self-care after they're burned out. So if you could speak to a leader who is not burned out yet, but then probably is on the verge, like what maintenance habits would you want them to start now?
I would say on their calendar, put down priorities, not just priorities for work and all the meetings they have to do and all these events they have to go to, but put it on the calendar intentional about where each day they're going to take care of themselves and
Mm-hmm.
how they're going to take care of themselves. So if they have a calendar that goes from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night every day, plug it in. Uh, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it would be no different um, if they had children and they have to pick up their child from
Mm-hmm.
school every day at 3 o'clock. They have to leave work and pick up their child, or there's childcare or adult care. No different. So then put it on the calendar that this is non-negotiable. I am going to leave every day at 3:30 on days that I don't have meetings. And these are the days that I am going to go to the gym and write it on the calendar. This is my gym time. This is my meditation time. This is my spa time, whatever it might be. But putting it on the calendar and then also looking at the calendar and saying, gosh, did I do it every day? If I didn't, something is wrong, right? Because it's not a priority. And later in life, 20 years go by and we just figure, oh my goodness, I only spent 1 hour a week on self-care. That will all add up health-wise, that something, without taking care of ourselves, something could show up in our health that we should have addressed, whether it's, you know, chronic disease or high blood pressure and going on medications, things like that. So I think just being able to put it on our calendar now and have the habit of doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is very, very much vital. Like at least, check ins, daily check ins, or maybe like, calendar audits that you gave an example. That was really, really a good one. And then having boundaries. And also, I think support systems, right? I don't think self care, I mean, just irrespective of the word that it is self, but it also involves, people around us,
Mhm.
support systems, I mean, it ha- doesn't have to be necessarily the people we know. I think sometimes we seek or we get support from the most unexpected places.
Mhm.
So, and uh, it, it, it doesn't have to always happen in isolation.
Very true. And I like how you say that, that support system can be people that we don't know. Uh, yeah, absolutely. Or it can just even be something online.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. I think that brings us full circle, Cynthia. So, self care is maintenance, not emergency repair. And if listeners they would like to connect with you further, share their thoughts with you after this conversation, and also get a hold of your book as well, what would be the best medium?
The best way, there's two ways. It can be direct email, which is my first name, last name at gmail.com. And then they can also find me on LinkedIn with the same Cynthia Rapaido. And I have a website that's still kind of in the beginning stages, and it's my first name, last name.com.
Amazing. So, listeners, I'll have all the details in the show notes, and I'll also put the episode link from this Blend podcast, the episode that I did with Cynthia on the different types of, fruit leadership. So, just refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And I think, listeners, this conversation is such an important, a vital reminder that leadership is not just about what you give, it is also about how long you can give without losing yourself in that. And self care is not about doing more, it is about choosing that choice, that what matters, protecting your values, and sustaining the person behind the role. So, especially for listeners who are educators, administrators, aspiring school leaders, I highly recommend checking out Step Up Your School Leadership Game. And Cynthia, thank you so much for being open and bringing that nuance and lived experience of this conversation.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you, Sana, for having me, and thank you to your listeners as well.
Amazing, amazing. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Mindful Living. And please remember this, that taking care of yourself is not stepping away from leadership. It is stepping into it, but with clarity and longevity. Until next time, stay present, stay grounded, and take care of the leader within you. Thank you.